children and none of them has sickle cell. So that chance is 100% for each pregnancy, and out of that 100%, each pregnancy chooses the 25%. So that's why some people say, okay, it's a 25% chance, then I can just have 2 children. Nothing says that those first 2.
So it's already the movement.
So why is sickle cell anemia really, it's just a change in gene, abnormal function. Why is it such a problem? It's such a problem because it has great clinical impact, not just on the individual that has sickle cell, but also on the family. On the individual, it leads to repeated pain crisis. It starts many times when the children are young, pains in their arms and feet. They grow up, some have a lot of issues, they have difficulty growing well, they miss school from recurrent illnesses, they have several complications, health challenges, and all that. And that impacts on the psychology of the child, the adult, and in the long run, many organs that are outside the blood get involved. Some of them can have kidney failure, they can have bone problems. I'm sure you've seen some people limping and they have to use crutches, they have to have surgery for bone replacement. They can have a whole lot of problems. And on the family, it takes away a lot of their resources. It puts stress on the family. It leads to emotional problems. A couple who were very happy getting married, suddenly they start having challenges because of their child. The stress, caring for the child, what it takes from them becomes a huge problem. So really, next slide. Can this be prevented? Do you think it's something that we ought to talk about? Do you think it's something that you should consider when choosing a partner? Should we consider sickle cell? Is it that much of a problem? I think it is. I think having a child that draws a lot on you is a problem. Is a challenge, not a problem. And then think about the child. The child goes through recurrent pains. I'm sure some people have friends that are sicklers. I do. Okay? They have recurrent pain. They have recurrent challenges. When they are pregnant, everybody is concerned. So I think it's something that if there's a way to prevent it, we should discuss it, address it, and try to prevent it. So how do you prevent it? By doing what we are doing. Okay? Every intending couple or every young person who plans to get married, like we all do, should know their genotype. So you should go know what your genotype is. If you're AA, then you're lucky. At least one marital problem is solved. You don't have to deal with something. You say to yourself, oh God, I thank you. This issue, I don't have to deal with it. If you're AS, you have one more challenge that you have to deal with. So it's not just finding the right man or the right woman. You also now have to think, is she the right genotype? Okay? So for us who are AS, we have to think more. Our prayer has to be harder. We have to ask God for one more thing, okay? Our prayer point is not just give me the right man. Give me the right man with the right genotype. All right. Okay. So, go back. So the question I ask, which is what we're here to discuss, is at what point in the relationship should we then bring this matter up? I don't have the right answer. It's something I want all of us to tell me, what do you think? At what point in a relationship do you think the issue of genotype should be discussed? Young people, yes.
I think it should be one of the first things at the beginning of the relationship. Because by the time emotions have started to get high in the relationship, the couple find out that they have a lot of challenges and that they are faced against one another. And most times in these issues, parents get involved and a lot of bad blood bounces back and forth. So I think in order to avoid all that, it needs to be dealt with from the inception of the relationship.
As a young girl, I meet a man, and very early I'm already asking him about his genotype. Am I not too pushy? You know, am I not being... Because you have to think about that. You say early. How early? Okay, is it the first day you talk to me? Okay. By the time I'm talking to you, and then after 1 week, I say, please, what's your genotype? You know, you say, what does she think? So I think it's something we really need to consider appropriately. Okay? You're very correct. At the earliest opportunity, you should discuss it. And that's for those of us that are AS. If you're not AS, if you're AA, I tell you, you're lucky. Okay? So you're just going about freely, looking at if you like the man, if he's the right one, and you start praying if you're seeing him in your dreams and all the right things. But I also think it should be done early, because when emotions are involved, we are no longer guided by facts. Okay, we begin to look at we begin to look at their options. So let's hear another opinion.
Now, for my own case, I didn't go asking for genotype, but my wife been then. No, not led by faith. No, I was, like wanting to know, but stylishly. I was wanting to know, but stylishly. When she fell sick somehow, I was like, why are you falling sick like that? What is your genotype? You know? I knew what I was looking for, but I didn't want to go. When she was sick, and I said, what's your genotype? I said, okay, I'm AS. That would get it settled. So that was that.
Okay? So it's telling you that's the way. You don't have to come out forward. And then, I'm a woman, so I can only talk about a woman perspective, but let's hear her first.
It's very nice for us to say that, like a woman, how do you want to deal with a situation where you're like from a strict home, where your parents tell you, even if all of you are A, your father doesn't want to hear that one of your, either your spouse or your husband is AS. How do you want to deal with that kind of situation? That kind of situation. From a very strict home whereby they don't hear anything about AS and everybody is AA, but it shouldn't be a problem.
Alright, that's very, very interesting. You know why parents, they are very strict about that is because they don't know. They don't understand. Okay? If they understood that if you're AA, and even if you marry someone, no. Literacy is not understanding. No, okay. Well, you have to pray. You have to pray for them. Okay? Because let's see, education and ignorance go together. Okay? Being educated, being knowledgeable is different from having wisdom. Okay? They are two separate things. You can have knowledge, even some understanding, but wisdom becomes when you apply your knowledge. If you have refused to apply your knowledge, then you don't have wisdom. That's the truth. So despite having the knowledge, they lack the wisdom in making informed decisions. That's really what wisdom is. So really, they need to be educated, counseled again, okay? Because it's not, they need to be counseled. They just need to understand it clearly that there is no risk whatsoever. If you're AA, you're safe from this whole discussion. You're fine. God has saved you of one problem. Honestly. So if you marry a man that is AS, nothing. The worst you can have is another child who is AS. They're okay, but you tell them that they're not going to be here. What happens after them doesn't concern them. That's the truth. What happens after their life does not concern them. We must learn to put our lives in perspective and realize the brevity of life. Honestly, I'm not preaching, but the brevity of life is that life is so short. If we think about eternity beyond life, this life is so short. So let's begin to say what's important. What is important is what I can do when I'm here. And I realize I'm not God, so I can do my best. Once I'm gone, whatever happens after me is beyond me. Even while I'm here, the things that are out of my power are out of my power. So really, they have knowledge, but they need more application of their knowledge so they can have wisdom. That's what I say. Okay, so again, I come back to tackling this issue. When are we discussing this issue? So I said, early in a relationship, for a woman, I can only talk as one. When a man wants to marry you, because this is also part of what we are talking about, getting married. When a man wants to marry you, you know. Okay? If you're guessing, he may want to marry me. I think he kind of likes me. He's only been distracted by that girl. That girl is after him. He really doesn't know what he's doing. It's a lie. He doesn't want to marry you. Okay? The truth is that when a man wants a woman, you know the song, when a man loves a woman, everything about it is true. All those stupid things are true. So when a man wants to marry you, you kind of know. So at that time, if you're the woman and the issue of genotype, you're concerned that you're AS, if you ask that question, it's even like, you that is so much after me, what's even your genotype? No, that's the truth. When a man wants a woman, nothing stops him. So if you come forward and ask his genotype, it's not going to chase him away. It's when somebody is not considerate, is not adequate. And I tell every young person, you know in your heart when a man wants to marry you. You know when you want him to marry you. They are two separate things. And you must have wisdom. It's important to marry a man that wants to marry you more than the one that you want to marry. That's the truth. Okay? If you marry the man that wants to marry you, he will take your nonsense. Because there's going to be nonsense from you. Every woman gives nonsense. Okay? And if I'm telling you, except those who were so wise from the beginning, I don't know. I was quite foolish in my own, I did a lot of foolish things, and they were tolerated. Okay? But if you are always, so if a man doesn't want to marry you, those your foolishness become issues. You know? Any little thing you do, he says, oh, it becomes an issue. But when a man wants to marry you, your nonsense is tolerated. He gives you time to grow. He gives you time to get there. Okay, even if he's the same age as you, he just takes your nonsense. So I think for a young woman or a young man, the issue of genotype should be asked, not asked as if it's a checklist. Oh no, come, I'm ticking it off. Okay? Are you this? Are you that? Are you that? It sounds, we must be tactful, but we must also be wise. Like our brother said, you see what he did? Come, you say, what's your genotype? It wasn't a checklist, but in his mind it was a checklist. Okay? But he didn't come out that it was a checklist. So that's the kind of wisdom we need to have. Okay, so what are the options? Because some people are already married. Some people, despite this, get married. So we need to know what are the options so we can advise other people who also know. And these options, we also need to ask ourselves, are they options for us? When two people are married, medically, you can know the genotype of a child before the child is born by doing prenatal diagnosis. When the woman is pregnant very early, the doctors go in, take the cells of the baby and check the genotype. That is actually possible. Okay? But then, what is the option? If the child is then SS, so you're going to do what? Abort the baby. So the issues of morality come in. Issues of conscience. You're going to deal with that. Because a lot of young people say, oh no, genotype is not a problem. When we get married, we'll be doing prenatal diagnosis. All my children will go and know their genotype before the pregnancy advances. But ask yourself, do you want to abort some of your babies and then choose the one that you will have? So it's a moral issue. It's a question we need to ask ourselves. What do we think about abortion? Is abortion murder? Is abortion by choice? Is it something we ought to do just like that without any risk to our pregnancy? Just to save ourselves of discomfort when we had an opportunity to make that decision and to make that choice before this problem came about? I think it's a moral issue we need to consider. And then, when we talk about, and some people say, okay, let's get married. We'll pray to God. God will help us because there's a 25% chance. So maybe the other 75 will give us the AS and the AA. But we must realize that there are natural principles and there are spiritual principles. And we ought to walk in a way that our lives are blessed, such that natural principles flow with spiritual principles. Miracles happen in a situation of crisis. Miracles are meant for crisis. So our lives should not be one miracle to another miracle. That's the truth. Because miracles mean they upset the natural law. You want God to turn what is not, to do an impossibility, what seems to be impossible. That's what a miracle is. But if you are walking in the blessing of God with wisdom, then your natural laws will just apply with your spiritual principle, and God will just walk in, and your life will just be blessed. You don't even need miracles because things are just going well. So taking the right decision, doing what you need to do, choosing at the right time, asking the right questions, then you don't need to put God to test and say, God, why don't you do this? Remember, when Jesus was on the mountain in Matthew 4, I'm concluding now, he said, that's the next slide. I think I have one verse. The next slide. The one before. No, the one after. Okay. Matthew 4:6. When the devil took Jesus to be tempted, he said what? The angels are surrounding you. If you fall, throw yourself down. If you fall, the angels are there. Lest you cast your feet against the stone. And what did he say? Do not tempt the Lord your God. So we have a choice. We don't need to wait for God to do the miracles that every pregnancy, 75% will occur. We don't need to pray for that miracle. We don't need to tempt God and say, God, this is your child. You must make him 25%. When God has already set the natural laws and has given us the opportunity to have wisdom, to have knowledge, and to apply our knowledge so that we can make the right choices, and then his spiritual and his blessings will just flow. And we don't need to be seeking one miracle, each child the next miracle, and the next miracle. So I think I have concluded. And so the floor is open here to help me out.
I think we can do better than that. Thank you very much, Dr. So please, can you take your seat? And I was wondering if there was a slide just before this, the options. Was that very clear to everybody? Because at that time they were still trying to shift. The slide before the concluding one, second to the last slide, please. Yeah, that one. Was this clear enough, or do you want her to highlight it? Hello? Let her highlight it. I thought as much. That was the feedback I got. Thank you.
Okay, so here, what I was trying to say is that some people are already married. We know people who are AS, both AS, or if some people plan to marry despite knowing that they are both AS. So what options do they have? There is an option, prenatal diagnosis, okay, where before each pregnancy, you go to the doctor early in the pregnancy, and they can take some portion of the cells of the baby. Remember, a baby starts with cells, and they'll be able to know the genotype of the baby. But then I asked the question, if that baby is SS, then what? Because you did that to know. And then when you then know, what do you do about it? So the option is what? That you're going to abort the baby. So you're now selecting your baby. Okay? Also, some people would say, okay, we'll have all our children by IVF, in vitro fertilization. That means they will go, each pregnancy, they will get the man's egg, sperm, mix them, tell doctor what's the genotype of this mixture that you've made. And they say it's AS. Okay, we don't want him. We don't want that child. So those are moral issues. And that's what I'm saying. Do we want to have those, to deal with those issues in addition to all the other issues you have to deal with? I think it's an issue that can be prevented. It's something that can be prevented if we do what we need to do at the right time. which is to avoid it. I'm telling you, that man who is AS, who is going to give you the challenge of having a child with SS, many times our will, we say it's the will of God. We should check very well. God has set natural laws. They are natural laws. If you climb this tree, climb this house now, you will drop down. Okay? If you fall on this thing and leave your hands, you're going to fall. Okay? The only way you won't fall is if it's a miracle. And why will God want you to do a miracle? By showing off and climbing up and letting your hand go. He will cause a miracle when there's a need, when you're in a real crisis. Not just because you want to show off. Jesus didn't show off, despite the fact that he had the promise that if he falls, that angels will be there to minister to him. Yet he said, why tempt God? Why do I need God to do this when there are so many important things? So he said, I think it's something that we can prevent. It's something that, thank God, we have this opportunity to know so that we can deal with it and always bear it in mind. So if you don't know your genotype, go check what your genotype is. Have it in your back pocket, okay? If you're AA, praise God and just move on. If you're AS, just say, I have one more issue to add to my prayer point. God, send me a man or a woman who is AA. Don't send me the one that is AS. Don't send me the one that is AC. You give God your list, and I'm sure he can handle it.
Amen. Thank you very much, Dr. Uju Ozoh. We have really benefited from that exemplary delivery. Do we have any other question? Question? Yes, please. Please come over.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Dr. Ozoh, for a very beautiful delivery. Points well delivered. And I would like us to really, really believe and accept that we need to check this before we go into a marriage relationship. The problems of dealing with an SS or children like that can be very, very, very traumatic. And just like somebody said, one of you said that you had to do it in a very tactical manner. I think we should try and do it from the outset of the relationship, albeit in a very tactical manner to avoid all of this. We don't have to be sentimental about this. It's very, very, very important. It's one of the things that are going to keep the marriage going and help you all in your marriages well into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Bosekoka. Those are words of wisdom. Amy, can we make it as brief as possible?
Praise the Lord. I just want to buttress our point, especially the last one that says a miracle is not supposed to be expected every time, but as crisis period. I'm a perfect example of this genotype problem. I was an AS. I was an AS for a very long time. I had crisis, as in, it wasn't, AS crisis, as in, I couldn't climb heights. I had problems. I used to have epilepsy, vertigo, very funny problems. I used to see diverse kaleidoscope of colors in different ways. And I started praying. I gave my life very early. I was 8 years old when I became born again. I started praying. And in addition to that problem, I had a bad leg. So I was thinking, who would want to marry somebody with a bad leg and with this type of problem? I started praying. And all in all, over a period of about 10 years, the Lord answered me. Today, I'm a perfect AA. So, and the Lord answered me. I didn't dwell on the problem. I prayed, I continued praying, and had faith that if God can do something, He will do something. June 1987, at Redeem Camp, the Lord answered me.
Thank you very much, Amy. Thank you. I would like us to recognize the fact that this Blessed Big Picnic is being held in conjunction with the Adam and Eve Forum. Reverend Akingbola is the chaplain of that forum. He's coming up to speak next. And our brother, Uncle Ned, is the coordinator. So once again, let's give a round of applause to Adam and Eve Forum for putting this together. Now, I would like us all to thank Dr. Ozoh in a very, very unique way. Can we be upstanding? And you follow? No, Dr. Ozoh, please sit. We are going to blow you some kisses. Please sit down. We are going to blow you some kisses and then you collect all. So when I say to the left, I want you to do 1, 2, 3. To the right, 1, 2, 3, and then you blow her. Okay? To the left, 1, 2, 3. To the right, blow her kiss. Collect. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Dr. Ozoh has to leave us. I want to appreciate that once again. I wish I could say, pray for God mercy as you return to your destination. Thank you very much for being with us today. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please, can we just quickly take a picture with all the resource persons?